Welcome back to Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith in Atlanta, John Schumann in New Jersey, my main man. The 2018-19 season is upon us. It's right here. We can see training camp in the distance for all these teams around the league. So we're cranking up a little bit here with division previews. We've already done the Pacific Division. This is our second preview, the Atlantic Division. Shu, this is close to home for you, I know, obviously. You know, you being located up there in the tri-state area and having access to several of the teams in this division, you know, in close proximity to you. Boston is most people's pick for the cream of the crop in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to start with Boston and ask you, is that the team that you look at and say they make all the sense in the world with Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward coming back to what we saw from them last year in the Eastern Conference Finals team, that they should be there in that seat at the top of the East?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they have everything, basically. I mean, they had the number one defense in the league last year, and they have on offense Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, and then even like a, spark plug off the bench like a Terry Rozier. So I think they have the ability to be the best team in the East for sure, and also maybe the biggest threat to the Golden State Warriors in the postseason, just because their ability to match up and play different ways and play small with Horford at center, who's a mobile guy on both ends of the floor and a fulcrum on both ends of the floor, but also play big and have a guy like Aaron Baines who can absorb some of the hits against a guy like Joel Embiid in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So there's not much to dislike about Boston and not much to worry about Boston if you're just throwing health out of the equation.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for this. I mean, this team could be really good. The Celtics are the only team that has seen a winning percentage increase in each of the last 4 seasons. So in
the only team in the entire league?
Only team in the league. In Brad Stevens' first year, 2013-14, they won 25, then they went to 40, 48, 53, and 55 last season. And they can make it 5 in a row for sure.
Yeah.
I see them as a 60-win team and the best team in the East, unless one of these other two teams that we're going to talk about in this division takes a big step forward.
Right. Let me ask you one question, and I, like you said, we don't have many about the Celtics. They obviously are stacked. Is it a bigger deal for them having a healthy Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, or the fact that LeBron James is no longer standing at the end of the tunnel in the Eastern Conference with the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I think it's more about them than LeBron not being there. I really do. I think if LeBron stayed in Cleveland this summer, I would still pick the Celtics to win the East.
Okay, that's exactly.
I mean, they had Game 7 on their home floor.
Yeah.
And if they don't shoot 7 for 39 from 3-point range, then they are the first Eastern Conference team to knock LeBron out of the playoffs since 2009. So, honestly, I thought they should have won last year.
Yeah.
They should have beat him last year, and for sure I would have thought they would beat him. I would favor them this year with those two guys healthy and with Brown and Tatum being one season better,
Most people are looking at that division and at the Eastern Conference in total and saying Boston won in a lot, most people saying Philly too, but I'm going to switch gears. Is it me, or are we overlooking the Toronto Raptors? Even with the tumultuous summer they had, trading away DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard and firing the coach of the year in Dwayne Casey and replacing him with Nick Nurse, I still feel like we're overlooking the Raptors and the fact that they could very well be that team that's right there behind the Celtics in the division and in the East.
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I think I wrote down, best case scenario, they're the best team in the East. And Kawhi Leonard is an MVP candidate. Mm-hmm. I think, heck, they were a top 5 team on both ends of the floor. The only top 5 team on both ends of the floor last season. So why can't they be that this season with Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green in place of DeMar DeRozan? And with guys like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam just getting better. Those guys are really good. I mean, this was the best team in the East last season, right? They were there.
Yeah.
They just had a meltdown of epic proportions in the conference semifinals.
Right.
And I still don't know how to explain it. I really don't. They were the better team in that series going into that series, and they should have won that series if they played to their ability, but they didn't. For me, I think it's about Anunoby and Siakam. I think specifically Siakam, and then also Serge Ibaka. I think he took a step backward in the playoffs last year. He almost became unplayable in the playoffs last year in that series. I think he played like 12 minutes in one game and like 18 or 19 minutes in another game in that series. If Siakam and Ibaka can play center and be effective small ball centers, this team could be really terrific defensively, especially just with all their athleticism on the wing and playing small and versatile. Ibaka is only 29, like 28 years old. He's turning 29 early in the season, I think. So, or I'm actually next week, I believe he's turning 29. Mm-hmm. So, like, he should be able to be floor spacing, shot blocking 5 guy that every team would love to have. I just don't, I think it's just a matter of recovering from whatever happened last season. And so,
he hasn't played in that space. I thought he's drifted away from that the last few years for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe the athleticism has taken a step backward, and that's obviously tough. But maybe Siakam can step into that role. I mean, he's obviously got to shoot better. He was an awful shooter this past season, but like I said, they have the potential to be the best team in the East. The potential is there. If Kawhi Leonard is healthy and engaged and back playing like he was a couple of years ago, it's absolutely there. But, there's also a worst case scenario where that's not the truth, and neither of those, the Siakam or Ibaka, has a better season than they did last year, and their chemistry issues, and they take a step backward on both ends of the floor, and then they're the 3rd or 4th best team in the East.
Right. I got one question for you about the Raptors, and this involves Kawhi Leonard. Is it more important that Nick Nurse craft an offensive system around him, or that they fit him into one? The reason I ask that is we've only ever seen Kawhi in a Spurs uniform. We've only ever seen him in the system that was already in place when he got to San Antonio. So as great a player as he is, do we know if his game fits anywhere? Can you take him from one, side of the league to the other and have him be the same effective player regardless of the pieces around him?
I don't think you design an offense around him. Mm-hmm. And I say that because I don't think he's great at making plays for others. Mm-hmm. He's gotten so much better at shooting and scoring on his own, one-on-one, or just in pick and roll, but he doesn't have the vision and, the ability to sort of make plays for others. I mean, I think, we saw DeRozan take a big step forward in that last year, and I think his last year, DeRozan was better at sort of making plays for other guys than Kawhi Leonard was. And I'm just talking about that specific skill.
Sure.
Than Kawhi Leonard was 2 seasons ago when he was, I guess, 3rd in MVP voting, or 2nd or 3rd in MVP voting.
Right.
I think it's more about building a system where he fits in, and he's a big part of it. And obviously when he's on the floor, he's a big part of it, but where, you're not depending on him. You want the ball to move like it started to do last season, and, where the ball just finds the open guy, and it's not about one guy creating for others.
I'm not trying to cater. Yeah. I mean, I thought they got themselves in trouble trying to cater, to certain guys. And when it turns out they were a better team when, like you said, they involved all those different guys.
I mean, they have a lot of guys who can make plays. Lowry, Leonard, Van Vliet, even Wright to an extent.
Right.
DeLon Wright.
Sure.
And I think even Anunoby in Summer League, they put the ball in his hands a lot to help try to get him to develop, the on-the-ball skills.
Yeah.
So I think there's plenty of playmaking to go around for you to try, so you don't have to build a system that's dependent on one guy to carry the load.
Right. From the Raptors to what is undoubtedly my favorite player and favorite team to keep an eye on in this division, perhaps in the entire league. Look, I'm be honest. I love Joel Embiid. I love any dude who can have as much fun on his job and be as good at it as Embiid was last season, who takes this thing for what it is. He's not treating basketball like it's, life and death, but he's certainly out there going at it and enjoying it and poking the bear every chance he gets, whether it's other players or other teams. Are we down a little bit on them because of what they didn't do in the offseason in terms of they didn't attract that? Everybody's talking like they're going to get their hands on a big-name free agent. The only other meeting that LeBron James and his camp took in free agency other than the Lakers was with Philadelphia. So I guess they were at least in the running. But draft picks in Wilson Chandler and Mike Muscala does not signal this huge offseason influx that's going to change the fortunes for this team.
No, but I think if a star becomes available on the trade market at any time between now and February, Philadelphia is going to be on the phone quickly, and we'll have the assets. If you look at between Wilson Chandler and Jared Bayless, that's more than $20 million in expiring contracts. And then they have a guy like Zaire Smith that perhaps they could throw into a trade. They have the Miami pick, unprotected Miami pick that they picked up in the draft day trade that sent Bridges to Phoenix,
yeah.
and Zaire Smith to Philly. So I think they have the ability to still be shopping for stars, and they still preserve some cap space for next summer. So
Right.
I think they are still in the market for a third guy to add to the Embiid and Simmons core. This team could be, this is a third team. I think that could be the best team in the Eastern Conference. Another guy, Embiid, that could be an MVP candidate. They have the X factor of all X factors, I think, in
Markelle
Markelle
Fultz,
Fultz.
yeah.
I think what is he? What is he? Is he over whatever was bothering him last year? Can he play with Ben Simmons? Can they play together? Can he be a guy that just eats up second unit defenses? And for me, I worry about the offensive end of the floor. I think they're going to be fine defensively just because they're so big.
Right.
They have a lineup that includes Simmons, Covington, Saric, and Embiid. I mean, those guys it's just huge, and that's going to be a good defensive lineup no matter what. I think it's a matter of recreating the offensive success that they had in the second half of the season, sort of through the first round of the playoffs last year. With the departures of Bellinelli and Ilyasova, those are two keys to that. And so it's about recreating the sort of the player movement that they had with Bellinelli, the spacing that they had with Ilyasova.
Sure.
Fultz is a totally different element. But then I also worry a little bit about them getting caught between styles and sort of the pace of Ben Simmons and then the sort of the slow, deliberate post play of Embiid. Like They have to be able to put those together in a cohesive way.
Could Simmons have done enough work on his shot in the offseason to change the dynamic for them? For himself and for them as a team?
I'm curious. Yeah, I mean, they need both of those guys to be able, both Simmons and Fultz, to be able to make a shot outside of 15 feet. They can't. I think it's not just about Fultz being able to shoot. Simmons has got to be able to do it too. Boston took advantage of his inability to shoot. They played him
perfectly.
Played off of him. Yeah, stayed in front of him. And if you stay in front of him, he's got, it can be a struggle. So he's got to develop that shot as well. And so I'm curious to see both of those guys in the preseason. Heck, I don't even need to wait till October. You just look at their shots and how comfortable they are and how confident they are, and look at the form one of those first couple preseason games, and you might have a much better idea of how good the Sixers are going to be than we know right now.
Right. I'm going to have a lot of eyeballs, obviously, on the Sixers this year. But the one question about them, just as an organization, I'm wondering about, are they going to hire a GM? Like, is it going to happen? Do they not need one?
That's a great question.
Is Sam Hinkie still available?
You know what? I'm curious to see what happens. I don't want Brett Brown to have to deal with that. I think we've learned, Thibodeau is still trying to do the dual role
Stan Van
thing.
Gundy, it hadn't worked out well for a lot of guys.
I think we've learned that it's best for coaches to coach and GMs to do their thing.
Right.
It is curious that now it's been more than 3 months since Colangelo resigned.
And there hasn't even been like rumblings about them being pressed about doing something like that. About figuring out who's successor.
Yeah, there's been sort of rumblings that they're going to keep waiting.
Yeah.
But like I said, they have tools to make impact trades right now.
Right.
And you never know when somebody's going to come on the market. A Kemba Walker could go to the Hornets tomorrow and say, "Hey, I want out of here," or something.
Don't go start any rumors, Ron. Don't go start any fires.
I don't want to say, I'm not, and don't run with that. But there are other players that are on, say, expiring deals, or that may say, "Hey, you know what? I'm probably not going to stay beyond this year." Look at Minnesota. There's a particular two-way star that could say that.
Sure.
And the Sixers got to be ready to pounce if that happens.
True. One place where they don't have to worry about the dynamic between the front office and their coaching staff is New York. The Knicks, for the first time in a while, seem like they have some synergy between new head coach David Fizdale, Scott Perry, and Steve Mills in the front office. What they don't have is their anchor player. We don't know how long it's going to take Kristaps Porzingis to come back and recover fully from his knee injury that cut short his 2017-18 season. What are you hanging your hat on if you're a Knicks fan and trying to feel hopeful about not just this season but the future? Do you have to see Kevin Knox, become a Rookie of the Year candidate? Do you have to see, one of the holdover players, Frank Ntilikina, do you have to see him become something much more special than maybe what he showed as a rookie? Where can you find the silver lining if you're a Knicks fan?
I actually wrote down best case scenario for the Knicks, and number one is no setbacks for KP. Like
Right.
no, a smooth sailing as far as his rehab and recovery, and that he's 100% by next October.
Okay.
Forget this season. Yeah, maybe if he can play, okay, he can play,
But no rush, yeah.
And any part of this season, I mean, I do not see any scenario where this team makes the playoffs in the East, as bad as the Eastern Conference might be,
Right.
in the 6, 7, 8 range. I don't see any scenario where that happens. There's just not enough talent on this team around. There's not much. So number one is no setbacks for him, and he's ready to go by next season. And after that, I think it's Ntilikina's development offensively, off the dribble. I think he's like an impact player already defensively, but offensively he's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So you want to see a step forward in that way. You want to see, David Fizdale come in and, like we talked about with a couple of the Pacific Division teams last week, set a foundation, both offensively and defensively and culture-wise, and, set something up for the next few years where they can build off of, even if this is a 15 to 20 win season or whatever it is, as bad as it might be. And then, for Knox to translate some of his summer league success to regular season, and I don't think there's much pressure on him to do that. It's about getting his feet wet and learning the NBA. And then otherwise, I think it could be about, unloading a Courtney Lee or
Right.
I don't know, figuring out what's going to happen with Joakim Noah, because, we know they have dreams of making a splash in free agency next year, but both of those guys have contracts that go beyond this summer. So that's, Courtney Lee has like $13 million in 1920, and Noah has $19 million. Is owed $19 million in 2019-20. So they can unload some of that, or come up with a buyout agreement with Noah to increase their cap space for next summer. I think that's obviously important to them.
So what you're telling me is, if I'm a Knicks fan, I just need to...
Don't worry about the wins and losses, please. Don't even think about the wins and losses.
Right.
I hate to tell a team, I hate when fans root for their team to lose. That's the one thing. Players go out there to win, and coaches are trying to win. So I don't like that aspect of, NBA basketball when fans are rooting for their team to lose. But I'll just say, don't worry about the wins and losses with this team. It's about Ntilikina taking a step forward, Porzingis getting healthy, Knox getting his feet wet, and maybe, if you can, set yourself up better for 2019 than you already are.
Right. I do feel like there's a reason to be hopeful if you're Knicks fans, because you do have finally it looks like you have some stability in structure in place in terms of the framework provided by your front office and the coaching staff. So hopefully they get a chance to build a solid foundation, even if, like you said, though, not be concerning yourselves with wins and losses. The last team in the Atlantic Division that we're going to focus on is one that I think, Shu, personally, this is my pick to be the surprise team in the division and maybe in the East in terms of what the expectations are externally and what they might be capable of if they take that next step. And that's the Brooklyn Nets. And I love Kenny Atkinson's approach when he got there. He understood about developing young players and developing a system. I think he learned well, from his time specifically with Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta, and how to kind of set the dial, for a young developing team and how you bring guys along. And if you look at some of their young guys, just the strides they made since he's been there has been really nice. He and Sean Marks had history together, so clearly they got in there and worked in tandem in terms of figuring it out. But do they have maybe sneaky playoff potential in the East if things fall right for them?
I was looking at that. I wrote, best case, I wrote 8 seed ? And I think they're better than Atlanta, Chicago, Orlando, New York this season for sure, and maybe Cleveland, right? So that would put them 10th in the East.
Okay.
And then it's a question, can they leapfrog Charlotte, Detroit, or Miami, and get into that mix?
They'd have to have best case scenario, things would have to break for them.
And for me, it's they've done a good job developing guys, and guys have got better.
Right.
But my question is, how much better can some of these guys get than they already are? So I put worst case scenario is that the young guys are who they are, right? And that there's no real top 50 player on the roster.
Right.
that D'Angelo Russell just is who he is. He's not.
You think you don't think there's a chance for him to?
Well, that's the worst case scenario. That he is who he is. That he has issues with consistency. He has issues with decision making. He has major issues with defense.
Right.
That Spencer Dinwiddie sort of is who he is. Like, man, he was
I like him,
a surprise last year and a good player, but that he's nothing like a transcendent talent. I think the one to watch, guy to watch is Jared Allen, the center. Mm-hmm. If he gets sort of more comfortable playing NBA defense and he can become more active, I think he can be an impact defender.
Right.
And Russell is obviously an X factor. I mean, he has talent. The one issue with him is sort of like burst. Like he's more of an east-west guard than a north-south guard. He can't exactly, all right, he gets switched onto a power forward or center. Like he doesn't necessarily have the acceleration to get by that guy and get to the basket very easily. I don't know. I think in this NBA, you need guards that have burst or acceleration and can blow by guys. And I don't know if he's that. And so the question is, can he be a successful guard as more of an east-west guy, like I said, and having more of a feel? He has vision. I think he has good vision. I think he sees the floor pretty well. It's just about making the right decisions and stuff. Like his talent. I mean, he's number 2 pick 3 years ago, but this is the last year on his rookie deal. It's a huge season for him, and I'm fascinated to see if he takes a step forward.
He's got such crazy confidence, too, that I think that's always kind of been his X factor, but it runs out after a while, like where you have to have.
And it could be a bad thing. Like, I mean, if he's, there are times when he's feeling himself too much, and that can be a detriment at times. He's got to be, he's always got to know where his guys are on the floor, and he can make some brilliant passes. He's just not always in that mode. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting to watch him play. I think for the most part last year, they were better with him off the floor than they were with him on the floor. They were better with Dinwiddie running the offense than with Russell. But then when Russell came back from his injury, Dinwiddie took a step backward. And so I think both of those guys, both in their last year of the contract, I don't know if either one is the point guard of the future for the Nets. And I think that's a big question for them.
I think there's another thing about the Nets that has been kind of admirable. You see a lot of franchises when they know they're not going to be very good, they kind of try and sell you this notion that, hey, we're building for the future. We're building, a foundation for our team, and we're doing it, we're trying to change the culture, blah, blah. They're one of the teams that's actually said that and done it. Like, you can see it. It's a tangible thing, watching the difference in how they've played the past couple seasons as opposed to when they were spinning their wheels before that. I like that they've been as straightforward about it as they have, and then you see some proof of it in how they perform. Do you think that's about a guy like Kenny Atkinson coming in and just having that immediate impact on how they operate, or is that something organizationally that you think is even bigger? Maybe it's a thing that Sean Marks brings that in when he comes over and starts instituting certain things for those younger players.
I think it's both. I mean, I think Sean Marks is doing a good job as far as establishing a culture from his spot. And then Kenny Atkinson's doing a great job of doing the same from his position. And then I think they work together really well. I think, I think it's a pretty collaborative effort there. And so, but like I said, I mean, what they've established is similar to Philadelphia in the first couple of years of Brett Brown, right?
Yeah.
The problem is they haven't had the draft picks that the Sixers did. And so they don't have the clear talent that's going to develop into a top 10, top 15 player. Like I said, I don't know if they have a top 50 player on their roster, really. Like, and I'm talking about just top 50 player right now. I'm talking about like a guy who will be a top 50 player or a top 30 player or something. That's the issue, is like they're establishing that, but they haven't reaped the rewards of being taking the step backwards because of that Boston trade of 2013. And now this is the first year where they'll have their own draft pick, but they might be decent. They added some veterans to the bench that will probably win them a few more games. They upgraded their bench quite a bit.
Davis, Jared Dudley, Kenneth Faried, Shabazz. You're right. And final thought on the Nets, though, could they be major players in free agency? Could they maybe be the team?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a matter. Yeah, they have the potential. They have a ton of cap space next year. I mean, DeMar Carroll, Faried, Jared Dudley. Those are 3 big contracts coming off the books. I have them as having like $50 million or even more possibly in cap space, depending on their options and qualifying offers and all that stuff for next summer. It's just a matter of, is one guy going to take the leap? Is there two guys that want to go together and love the culture and go to that practice facility, or blown away by the practice facility and want to live in New York? I mean, who knows? I don't know, what the attraction. I mean, I know what the attractions could be, but I don't know if there are players that are attracted enough to that one city. 2 facilities, beautiful, great arena, great practice facility, and then 3, the culture that they've established. I mean, I think they're doing things the right way. It's just a matter of snagging that free agent or two.
Interesting. The Atlantic Division, to me, is going to be a bit more intriguing than people realize, Hugh. I think it's going to be the most top-heavy division in the East. When you think about it, those 3 teams, Boston, Philly, and Toronto, those are 3, they could be the 3 best teams in the Eastern Conference, easily.
And I think we said it before when we were going over power ranks, they could be the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best teams in the NBA.
That's crazy. To go from where they were a few years ago to where they are now is pretty remarkable. Do you have a Schumann stat for the Atlantic Division? Let me brush off my skills here.
All right. In the regular season last year, the Rockets led for 66% of their minutes. I mean, they were ahead for 66% of their total minutes in the regular season.
Okay.
So the question is, what team ranks second by holding a lead for 63% of their minutes last season? So this team,
I'm sure people would assume it's Boston because of how good they were when they got to the conference finals, but I'm going to say it's Toronto.
No, incorrect. Not Toronto. Toronto was 3rd at 61%.
Oh, man.
Boston was 7th at 55%.
So it's got to be Philly.
Yeah, 63%. So they were the best team in the first 6 minutes of the first quarter, and that they were plus 21 points per 100 possessions in the first 6 minutes of the first 6 quarter. That was the best mark for any team in either the first 6 minutes or the last 6 minutes of any quarter. So the Sixers in the first 6 minutes of the first quarter is basically as good as it gets for any sort of half of a quarter. But then they had the biggest drop-off in how good they were from the first half of games to the second half of games.
Right.
They were tied for the league lead in losses with 7 losses after leading by 15 or more. They were tied for the league lead with 4 losses after leading by 20 or more.
Wow.
So, they would get off to great starts in the regular season, and then, fourth quarters were an issue.
Yeah. It's kind of the story of their season.
Playoffs, though, remember they had some big fourth quarters against Miami in the playoffs, so they sort of just solved that issue in the playoffs. But it was they were an interesting team where they, like I said, they held the lead for 63% of their minutes. That just didn't translate into wins and losses as much as it should have.
Showcase division this year, I think, in the NBA, potentially. As much as we talk about the Western Conference teams that are powerhouses, the Atlantic Division, race could be the best in the league this year. We'll be back on Thursday with another division preview for the 2018-19 NBA season. Southwest Division is the one we're going to tackle on the next episode of the Hang Time Podcast. In the meantime, be sure, check out Sean Powell's 30 Teams in 30 Days series on NBA.com. Great stuff. It's running all month, all September on NBA.com. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for episodes all season long. John Schumann, appreciate you as always, brother. Talk to you soon, and we'll see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Hang Time Podcast, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts for a new episode every Thursday this season. And as always, say Kuna Matata.